everybody, I'm Mango Thunderslice, and today's video is GOP. Time to rise and shine or fail for the Republican Party in America, right? The constitutional prerogative. And so this is going to be expanding on the election and what the status of things is. Of course, as we all know, unless you are really totally disconnected from media, in which case you probably aren't hearing this right now either, is that the media has coronated Biden as the winner, right? Races that are like 800,000 votes for Trump can't be called for Trump, but as soon as Biden is up by like 3,000 votes in a state of like tens of millions of people, that's enough to call it, right? Including Fox News, which is pretty much, as being widely panned right now and being abandoned by conservatives who aren't, basically lobotomized or never Trumpers or, the imperial fascists masquerading as free market Republicans. Again, the liberal fascist party occupies both parties. The uniparty is the liberal fascist party. And on the left, they're trying to basically break the mold by bringing forth more progressive candidates, right, to give more socialism and make them feel good about this or that thing, which I guess, is not... To improve on the corruption of the neoliberals and the liberal fascist party is not hard to do, right? And I do actually agree with the substance of the statement that if we're going to be spending $1 trillion in military budget every year, I think that there are constructive programs that could be done. And again, I don't think this has to come in the forms of handouts or redistribution. I think it can just be in the form of preferential just having something of more of an access to capital program. And, I don't believe in giving people money, but there are certain programs which, I'm starting to learn about, and I think, that's not the worst idea in the world. Because if we can just give tools to entrepreneurs, and if we can give access to people to financial services and project management resources, then everybody can access that and everybody can benefit, and that benefits the economy. Everything should also be sustainable, but, we're looking into buying a house and, realize that the Federal Housing Authority doesn't consume any taxpayer funds. It basically just serves as a sort of a lending agency or a lending certification agency, and it has basically, fees that come in. And this is basically, helps people buy a first home, right? And so there's lower down payments. If your credit isn't as good, you can still get one. Just require more of a down payment, but still less than a normal property would. So, the fact that the agency is sort of is budget surplus or budget, constrained, and still provides meaningful access to people to home ownership, and thus, stimulates the development of the country and the development of families and the development of the country. I think those are good things. When I think, like Libya, before it got blown to smithereens by Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, it used to be actually a very benevolent state to its people, especially for those who are new families. And, even Poland right now, I think, is doing similar things where they incentivize families. They incentivize childbirth of the people who live there and make it easier for people to start families through use of tax incentives. Again, you don't have to, necessarily redistribute wealth. You can just use tax incentives. Again, all tax is theft, but if you can get a little bit more of that stolen money back, that's a big incentive for me. And I think it is for many. Of course, it's a dollar saved in payment is the same thing as a dollar earned, in a sense. And that's, well, that's why I'm glad that we kept, it looks like the Republican majority in the Senate will be held. And, the House, of course, expanded by 10 to 12 seats. But, and so even if they rig their way to a Biden presidency and just try and declare the whole thing over, which it's not, then they're still not going to be able to achieve really anything meaningful, because McConnell will stonewall and nothing will go through. And, he's in that sense, almost more powerful than the president, because he'll be limited to executive orders, and those will then be challenged, potentially by, the 300 federal judges that Trump put in who, understand that law can't be created through executive fiat. It is the legislature's role to create law, and that applies to election law, whether mail-in ballots or regular ballots or choosing the electors. It basically comes down to the state legislature. So when the Supreme Court hears the Pennsylvania case here shortly, they will basically throw out all of the mail-in ballots that were received after 8 p.m. on November 3rd, and Trump will win the state. And, a recount in Georgia and, even a moderate review of the fraud that likely took place in Atlanta is, likely to keep that one in Trump's favor as well. And, if Arizona and Nevada still technically can go to Trump, but ultimately the point is that even if they achieve their fake, rigged vote totals, and we're getting close to about a month from now on certification day, which I believe is December 13th or 14th, regardless of what ballots are what, the Congress has to essentially make a decision, and, basically the electors have to actually go to vote in the Electoral College for the president. And so the Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution empowers the state legislatures to basically determine the appointment of electors in the Electoral College. It does not appoint any judges. It does not appoint any governors. It does not appoint any county little pissant bureaucrats to determine what the rules are. It doesn't even determine, the Supreme Court of a given state. It is purely in the hands of the legislature. And as I covered in the last video, when they said that mail-in ballots can be received after 8 p.m., they violated one clause in Act 77, which enabled mail-in voting in Pennsylvania, and because of the non-severability clause, that invalidates the entire document. So, legally, I would say that more votes are actually in play to be invalidated than just those that were received after 8 p.m., because the moment that this Pennsylvania Supreme Court essentially invalidated that document, it ceased to have any weight, and thus any mail-in ballot received after that decision by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court would thus be invalidated in my reading. But again, I'm not a lawyer, but I find that just knowing the structure of the English language and the function of logic actually puts you almost in a professional category unto yourself, because there's plenty of people with all these credentials and they can't do much of that. They just learned how to move within the system and go through the motions and file papers and stuff. But, still, just having a mind and knowing it gives you the more power than at least 10 men who haven't and don't, as one prominent Irish socialist back in the early 20th century said. And it is very, very interesting right now because the state legislatures in 5 states that are of the contested states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia, Republicans control the state legislatures, right? Both the Senate and the House, or the Assembly. And so basically, there is absolutely the constitutional prerogative for those legislative majorities in those states to exercise their constitutional prerogative and directly choose the slate of electors on the basis that this rampant evidence of fraud has essentially invalidated the result of the election and skewed it heavily in the favor of a corrupt candidate whose Democratic city party bosses and machines have engineered 200%, vote to residential population, ratios, right? Where more people voted, twice as many people voted in a given district as literally even live there. So, even a cursory review of this, you don't need Elon Musk's, space AI to tell that there's some massive shenanigans going on. And again, it's been pointed out by many throughout the conservative media and throughout just the observing population of the world to this whole cluster that is the U.S. election. But the next phase is much more important than just identifying it. It is taking action and actually pressuring these Republican majorities in these states to exercise their constitutional prerogative and to directly choose the slate of electors, because this election was flawed and rigged. And on the basis of even 1 or 2 of the counties in one of these contested states, the entire thing could be overturned. The margins are so small that for them to call this for Biden and to say that it's all over is absolutely criminal. It is beyond fraudulent, and it should be prosecuted in court. There should be no immunity for this kind of chicanery and bullshit. I mean, it's just amazing. Again, and I can still retain respect after this election and any other for those liberals that are still honest enough with themselves to recognize corruption when they see it and to recognize a rigged game when they see it. And, again, the people in my life who I can still converse with and respect are those liberals, or people on the left who actually understand that Joe Biden is a terrible candidate. He has dementia, and he is extremely corrupt. His whole family is corrupt, and that this election is being stolen right now, or attempted to be stolen by the mail-in ballot fraud that Trump has been, railing against for months and months and months. And it has played out exactly in the manner that he called it. And that is because there's only so much, I guess, federal control over these city election machines where they can just generate votes like a freaking hot dog factory. It doesn't matter if there's a signature, right? The Nevada Registrar of Voters, I think his name is Joe Garcia, intentionally set the DPI required resolution for the incoming ballots to like 40 DPI versus 200 DPI, to the point where the standards don't exist. It would be like if you turned down the standard on an ATM to basically accept anything that even looks remotely like a dollar bill. And you could put in like Monopoly money, and it's like, all right, yeah, you just deposited $10,000. Thanks. Here's a receipt. That's essentially what's going on here. And the unfortunate thing is, once those votes get in, even if they're fraudulent, they can't really be uncounted. Even in a recount, they're still going to be they're still going to be put in the same pile. If there is enough evidence of rampant fraud, and the legislative majorities for the Republicans in these states are effectively lobbied and convinced that they are obligated by their constituents to choose a direct slate of electors, well, then this is setting up one of the craziest constitutional situations since like at least a century, because the governor would also choose a slate of electors. You'd essentially have two sets of electors for heading to the Electoral College to Congress in the event that this were to happen. And so it would basically be up to Congress to choose essentially what is going on and which ones to accept. And that is going to be a very interesting situation, but the fact is that it can be done. The Constitution gives power to the state legislatures to make this choice of the appointment of the electors, and ultimately it is to save this country from a fraudulent election and a coup, just like a banana republic, just like Syria, Ukraine, any of these other nations where we've used these Soros tactics, these color revolution tactics, and tried to overthrow the country. Now they're doing it here. And just as they manufacture the election, right? Because Dominion voting systems, the same system used in all 30 states where, in all of the states where there has been all this ridiculous, huge percentage differential in population turnout and swing for Joe Biden, and on 30 states in total, right? There is a huge amount of systemic fraud taking place within the programming system. This company worked with the Clinton Global Initiative. They worked with Pelosi, right? Nancy Pelosi. So the fact that hasn't been investigated by the FBI and the DOJ, again, they're too busy investigating all the things that don't matter. And, hopefully, there's at least some merit to the Q thesis, and there's actually some investigations into this CP, pizza-related, stuff that's still just like more obvious than ever. The whole Hunter Biden laptop, the fact that the big tech companies hid that right up until the election, and then just gave a half-ass apology, is just unforgivable. And, the next 4 years, regardless of the outcome here, need to be disconnecting from these mainstream media apparatus and creating new, sustainable, decentralized platforms on which to challenge the narrative coherently. And that's already happening, but it needs to happen a lot faster from this point on. And, people need to get involved at their local election. People who live in these cities, these corrupt cities, there's only I've kind of advocated retreating from these cities, and to an extent I still believe that's true, but if you're still going to be anywhere near these cities, see what you can do to place positive energy and constructive, checks and balances on that system. I mean, geez, just make some orgonite and put it next to all the cell phone towers, right? Just become a poll watcher, participate in the system to try and hold them to account, and at least generate this chain of evidence to hold these people to account. Because again, justice can be served. It often isn't. Our Department of Justice often is a total mockery of its purpose. And, again, I'm still sort of an anarchist in spirit. I just don't believe that it's possible in physical reality, and it's kind of useless to discuss. Until people become morally perfect or find some common ground, it is a moot point. We all can be free inside the kingdom of heaven, but outside those walls, there are no rules, there are no laws. And so, basically, the law of the jungle and the law of might makes right is the only thing that has ever mattered. And these people who are materialists, these soulless Democrats and rhino Republicans that just want to, leech life force from the populace on which they're supposed to be serving and enrich themselves at the expense of the nation. I mean, there needs to be some sort of, basically action. Again, I think that they really fear the populist left and the populist right, basically uniting their righteous indignation and basically creating an unstoppable force. And that's what Trump almost achieved. In a big way, he did achieve, but because so many people still believe the media, it only went so far, and we'll see again where it goes from here. But I'm still optimistic that something very, very huge is coming, and it could, the actual result of the presidential election could hang in the balance. So, we'll see where it goes, but again, as much as I am saying we need to fight for the optimal outcome, or as good of an outcome as possible in every situation, including political situation and actions, we also should disconnect ourselves psychically and spiritually from this outcome, right? Donald Trump is not going anywhere if he loses, right? He's going to be in some ways more unchanged than he ever was before. Biden and Harris won't be able to achieve anything with McConnell basically just stonewalling him at every turn. And if even a few, Democrats defect from the party, then it's very easy to get, legislation through that doesn't, have the support of, basically Nancy Pelosi and co. And we'll see if she even stays in power, because the Democrats with half a brain know that she, just like Joe Biden, is a relic of a bygone era and is absolutely an anchor weighing down the future progress of people who actually are, at least in good spirit, in good faith, trying to improve the world, right? They might be wrong. The socialists are wrong, but, basically some of them are operating in good faith. And the ones that still have a logical brain and are actually still operating in good faith, those are the people that I can still talk to. And the people who know that basically, something really has to change in both parties. But in the Democrat Party, you've seen far less change than in the Republicans. And if the Republicans think that they can just go back to neocon, George Bush era versus, continuing on the agenda of Trump and America first, then they're sorely mistaken, and they should be held to account, and they should be primaried and challenged out of their positions. Because if the Republican Party can successfully complete its transition to a working business, basically constitutional party, it will have so much more of a wider grasp and reach than it did before. Again, the perception of it as just old rich white guys, was a very well held and valid in certain senses critique of the Republican Party for a long time. That's what I know everybody that I grew up thought, think of the Republican Party as old rich white guys who just want to protect their money. But in reality, it's basically, there's rhinos who corrupt the process and stymie the genuine efforts to try and bring some sort of constitutional order and balance and prosperity to this country through freedom and liberty. And then there's those who want to basically, put chains and locks on things so that they can control it for their own benefit and the benefit of their crony system in which they operate. And we need to continue shining a light no matter what happens. We are the light, they are the reft. They can try and take whatever they want, but it only succeeds in darkness. If we shine a light into the darkness, we can interrupt the processes of evil wherever and whenever they are occurring. But then again, we should be prepared for conflict, because these people have gotten away with it for a long, long time, and they intend to continue getting away with it. And why would they be so brazen to try and even steal these elections in states with Republican majorities? It's because they know what they need, and they know that they will do what it takes. And I almost wish that our side had a little bit more of that spirit, because it is needed. Again, be wise as serpents and, peaceful as doves. We should be aiming for a higher purpose and applying our faculties, but we have to keep that reptilian consciousnness always alive as well. Otherwise, we'll be taken advantage of as prey to a predator, right? And so, yes, that's I guess the main point. The media's celebrating, everybody's celebrating, but in the main, I'm just trying to focus on my life, which is improving, and that all the good things that are moving forward, even if they if they successfully rig this election. But I do think, again, that something big is coming down the pipe, and I don't feel that we will see a bias. It's like, maybe it's just confirmation bias, but I don't feel like a Biden presidency is going to happen. But we'll see. I could be wrong. It's happened once or twice before. But anyways, that's my video today. Just keep the faith, keep on moving, but always fight. Always fight for every little inch, because that little inch might be the difference between basically life or death in the end. So, that's my message today. Let me know what you guys think. Share the video if you like it, and I'll talk to you next time. Peace.
Ah.